Kaore pea I a koe te mana whakahaere I ngā āhuatanga ka pā ki a koe. Engari, kai a koe te whakatau, kia kaua koe e iri whau.
Chandeliers into the ceilings of our mouths to give these syllables a little light to dance with. With the wings of the birthplace of a Māori Jesus, I bet he knew national anthems and nothing about being proud and everything about forgiveness. Ko tongariro te maunga, ko wanganui te awa, ko Aotea te waka, no Ngāti Wenuku ahau, ko Paraweka te marae, ko Isla Reeves tōku ingoa. Kia ora, I'm Isla Reeves. I'm a teacher aide, a te reo Māori student, a poet and a musician. I want to help people because I can't think of another way of being alive. In my family, like probably in a lot of Māori whānau, there's a certain amount of shame or whakamā that people have about disconnection to te ao Māori. I remember my dad telling me that he went to school and he got asked to write down his iwi because he was registered as a Māori student, and he wrote down Martin, which is like the family last name. I was for a long time one of about 2 Māori students in our primary school of 400. The opportunities to relearn what your parents couldn't tell you weren't there, so what was disconnected kind of just stayed disconnected. I did Japanese as my language choice in my first year of high school, and as much as I liked it, I kept looking at the Māori class, which was directly across the hallway, and being like, I should be in that class. So I reckon I had this calling to be a part of te ao Māori and to recognise my own Māoriness or whatever. It's quite difficult to find a starting point for my journey with mental illness. When I was little, I was very, very scared of a lot of things, but also had this like outrageously confident, energetic, very manic side of my personality. There were times I was literally flinging myself around the lounge, like cartwheeling on the couches until like 4 in the morning. And then other times where I was really exhausted and nervous and I'd get all shaky and stuff. As I got into my teenage years, that was when it became apparent that I did have extreme highs and extreme lows. Because I couldn't really control that and I didn't know what it was, I developed all sorts of ways that I would deal with that. So I felt like I had a sense of control. Being restrictive about my eating or being obsessive about having things like laid out in perfect order. So when I first got taken to a psychiatrist when I was about 14, I wasn't shocked when they said bipolar disorder. They don't often diagnose 14-year-olds with bipolar disorder. And I suppose that was when everything really began. With mania, it creates a complete lack of fear or inhibition, which is the main danger of mania. You're on top of the world, and you can do anything, and there's no possible way that you could get harmed. You're completely invincible. You can hear things that aren't there, you can see things that aren't there, and it's just a really terrifying experience. With wings of Jerusalem, baptised this, the snarling dog of hell-bent heaven. Reo for days, son, they said, and then they didn't. Fled to the big smoke, sky tower syringe, piercing rangi nui and getting him high and higher until the flood encouraged itself, and she will come to rehab with us and to the doctor's clinic with the brown faces on the wall singing, another one bites the dust. I was 18 and I moved up to Auckland to start a Māori development degree. and ended up having to come home after like a week of university and got put in hospital. I was in the adult ward. If I had been just a couple of months younger, I would have been put into the youth ward. It was a very, very scary experience. There was a pukinga whai, or a Māori mental health worker, who was assigned to me. It was her job to advocate for me as a Māori person, and she was always encouraging of my music. She was telling me, go to a writing thing. If you can get a few hours leave, go do that. She came to help me as a person, and she didn't have any agenda or any goal. When I was in hospital, I wrote quite a bit. I think I wrote probably out of a desire to document everything, because you're just in this horrible but also just weird and foreign situation. So writing kind of makes it familiar. But I also did feel like everything was probably at its most intense at that time, which meant that writing about it was easier because I wasn't having to like dig out what I was trying to say. I came out of that experience and I entered Rising Voices, which is a New Zealand spoken word competition for young people under 25. And I won the Christchuch one with a poem that I'd written about being in hospital. And I guess that to me made it quite clear that I could make something quite like beautiful and abstract out of a really awful experience.
You imagine when Isla was younger, she never stayed still, always on the go. It was a terrible journey for her, but she's gone from being this hyperactive child who had this energy and intensity that sometimes I felt was sort of almost dangerous because you didn't know where it was going to go. She's just settled in her mind and calm.
Coming out the other side, it became super clear to me what I did want to do to help people. So I became a teacher aide and started working with a fantastic young man and helping him at school. And then that kind of gave me some insight into the world of education and the world of mental health, because when you're working with a young person who's not well, you're undoubtedly helping them also with that.
Feeling that she was doing something worthwhile and that she had something to offer, that seemed to be the beginning of her getting better.
It's like a cliche that we do things better when we're together, but it's also very true. And if we're not helping and supporting other people, it kind of leaves the world in a weird kind of individual mindset, which is really not what I'm about. I'm about the community and connection. Being able to like help someone else on a journey that you've already been on kind of rounds things off in a nice way.
E hauora ana taku tīnana. E wheriko ana te hinengaro. E mākoha ana te wairua.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.